Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are going to be starting something new today, something that we've always been focusing on, but ultimately never really congealed into a particular form of shir, and that's what we're going to be doing on Tuesdays for the foreseeable future, Be'ezras Hashem. And the series of shirim is going to be called the Torah of Today, the Torah of Today, and it's going to be practical avodah. Practical avodah in the sense that a person can come to the Torah and to Pnimiyas Torah in multiple ways, but generally speaking, there's going to be two frames in which a person can enter into Pnimius. One is on the level of the Moach, and one is on the level of the Lev. These two agents of the self, which compose the self and are ultimately two parts of a singular whole, are the mind and the heart, Chachma and Bina. The mind is the place that receives information and processes information. And as we've seen from many of the Svarim and many of the Shirim that we'll continue to give Bezras Hashem, the circuitous routes of thinking and processing of thought and the gradations of thought and what it takes for an initial burst of an idea to take shape until the point that it can be engraved upon the shape of the mind, there's many, many, many levels. And in the world of thought, in the world of abstraction, in the world of transcendence, a person can remove themselves from this world and enter into their mind. In the secret of Kadsalik Berusa, when a person ascends into their will, and a person can really find themselves in their head and they can enjoy themselves in their head. They're sha'ashuim. Yom yom, each and every day, a person can uncover Chedushay Torah and new vistas of insight and uncover hidden insight that's resting within the words of the tzaddikim. And it's the process of contemplation. It's the process of hisbonenus. It's the process of thinking godly thoughts, thinking about God, thinking about the ideals in the world, looking out from the place that I find myself right now and abstracting myself to the place where the thoughts are operating in a state of calmness. Now, those ideals have a profound therapeutic benefit in life because thinking is ultimately the thing that we do. We are thinking creatures. We have a koyach of ma, we have a koyach of machshava, we have a koyach of a seichel. And as human beings, our job is to domesticate the chaos of reality by way of intellectual, organized thought that groups things into categories, and categories join together to create larger categories. And then we have the general principles, and it allows us to then descend down into the particular points and cultivate the playfulness that is born out of the interface between the general principle and the particular point, the secret of the klal and the prat. This is ultimately what Yud Gimel Midos Sha'Torah Nidreshes Behem are all about. The way of thinking, the modes of contemplation in which the mind can live in its own head, where it can abstract its thought and live in the calmness of those machshavos tovos and that world of Torah. Most of the Yud Gimel Midos Sha'Torah Nidreshes Behem are simply a conversation as to how to develop a relationship between the whole and the part, between the klal and the prat. In the space of the mind, we have the ability of developing ways of thinking, developing modes of outlook that after a while, if we can think about them enough, so then they become the first thoughts. The way that cognitive thinking takes shape, the way that our systems of thought take shape, when they asked the original psychologists, when they asked Freud for a good description of what thinking actually is and how the thinking mind operates, he described it as a palimpsest. A palimpsest is almost like a mystical writing pad, that the mind is a blank sheet of paper or a blank slate that can be engraved upon. And each process of thinking is a layering of texture. It's a layering of writing. It's information that is informed through the neural pathways that engrave the letters and the osios and the words of thought. And if I think those thoughts over and over and over again, so they congeal from very fine engravings and they become permanent ink to the degree that these thoughts become absolute knowns and they become the laws of my thinking. Now, these schematic patterns of thought that have developed over time simply because they've been thought for so long, they become sedimented within the mind to the degree that we accept them as laws. And that's a good thing because a person wants to think about the Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah. A person wants to be able to contemplate thinking about Emunah and Torah and all of the things that we want to hold dear and true in this world. And it would be too much for a person to have to reorient themselves to all of the processes of coming to faith again. So thankfully, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us the strength of the habituated nature of thought, which is that by thinking something over and over and over, a person has the ability of engraving those first postulates so that when I wake up in the morning, I'm no longer needing to awaken those original thoughts, but reality is now being seen through those thoughts. After a while, those thoughts are engraved upon the palimpsest of the mind, upon that invisible ink of the mind, and it becomes the known reality of my thinking structure. That also lends itself to a very dangerous pattern because we understand that there are many, many cognitive distortions as well that emerge as a result of this faulty nature of thinking. That yes, if I think good thoughts and I think those good thoughts and those positive, healthy frameworks and outlooks that I want to see in the world and I want them to be the anchor of how I ground myself in this worldliness, so then those positive thoughts, those machshavos tovos are going to be embedded within the mind. But a person is a Bal Bechira in this world, and our thoughts are never pure because they're always in relationship to reality itself. And that runs the risk of giving us the wrong type of thinking. And when a person cultivates the wrong type of thinking, even if it's a hair's breadth of a mistake, that can eventually express itself way down the line by way of thinking those thoughts over and over to really destructive, negative thought patterns where we operate within a certain sense of stuckness, where when I wake up in the morning, instead of having a clean slate for the day, my mind is already operating with all sorts of negative thought distortions, all or nothing type thinking, black or nothing, black or white type thinking, etc., etc. And I'm not a Bal Bechira to break free of those because those have become the laws. So in the realm of the moyach, in the realm of seichel, what happens is that the thoughts basically run the show. And the goal of the thoughts are to contemplate ways in which I would like to live in this world, ways that I would like to see this world. And they are very potent. They have a profound impact on the way that a person functions. My machshavos are, generally speaking, the way that I'm going to experience reality. But in the end of the day, they remain removed from the lived experience of this world. If we had to compare the machshava or the moach of the individual to the worlds of spirituality, it would be like the world of Atzilus that is very pure, very refined when it's refined properly, but it doesn't necessarily bear a fundamental impact on the day-to-day experience of this worldly experience. Thinking allows me to look at life from the long view in connection and context to the past and the future towards where I would like to see it go. In that place, I can look at life and I can abstract myself and remove myself from the momentary issue and I can look at it from a higher point of a perspective. But nevertheless, that's always an abstraction from life. That's always a tzimtzum away from life. And that leaves me stuck within the machshava. And the machshava is a profoundly powerful thing. And the machshava has a pu'ula, and the machshava can inform the way a person lives. But in the end of the day, it still takes a person out of this world. It still keeps them in the world of the machshava. And it doesn't necessarily have a fundamental impact on the day-to-day experience of life. Now, there's a secondary way in which we experience ourselves, which is the lave, which is our bina. And as we've spoken about over and over and over, and we'll continue to speak about over and over and over, these are not two separate things. Chachma and bina, the mind and the heart, the father and the mother, the general principle and the particular, the abstract ideal and the lived experience of the real, these are not two separate categories, but rather two expressions of the singular whole. But nevertheless, once we're aware that they are singular and unified, then we have to now properly understand the difference between them. We have das, which is that tells me my mind and my heart are unified, above and below are unified. Hashem is here and Hashem is there. But once I have das, then I can have havdalah. That means once I understand that there's a unity, now I can begin to properly understand the difference so that I can live according to the proper differentiation between the moach and the lave. The heart, very differently than the mind itself, is not going to be calmed by general principles and abstract notions that seem to be true when I live in the illumination of my mind. The illumination of my mind has the capacity of calming me when I live in the calm space of the mind. But when a person enters into the chaos of the heart, where there's already a split process of the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara, and the left and the right side, and the doubled nature of yearning this way and yearning that way, and being exposed to all of the extremities of this worldliness. It's the place of the midos. It's the place of change. It's the place of moving on the fly. I'm not operating in the laboratory-like experience of the Moach in its cool, calm, and collected self-sameness. But here I find myself stuck within the raging flames of a heart that is filled with desire and yearning. And at the core of it, it's all good and it's yearning for a singularity of living in the mind itself. But down here in the territory of the heart, and the heart keeps score, it's the place where we experience all of the bumps and the wounds and the wins and the ups and the downs, and it's torn in all sorts of directions. And in the territory of the heart, abstraction is an escape because abstraction is running away from the face-to-face encounter with the lave. The lave is the territory of the emotionally lived self. It's the place where I encounter this worldliness. It's where I feel this world. It's where I experience visceral emotions that awaken within me that seem to take away my capacity to be a Baal Bechira, that seem to take away the cool, calm, and collected moment of distance that enables me to pause and reflect so that I could properly respond to the incoming stimuli of the situation. In the place of the lave, we become more animal. We encounter the impulses and we encounter habits and we encounter disappointment and frustration. In the world of the machshava, okay, so a frustration can be taken into consideration because if I'm thinking in ideals and I can escape into the purity of my mind and I can live with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my mind on the level of Atzilus, okay, so all mistakes are going to be seen from the bird's eye view of unity and they're not going to be too difficult. I might feel them momentarily, but in the realm of the Mayach, the feeling is secondary and therefore I run away from it. I abstract it and I go directly up to the place of being mamtik. But in the place of the lave, it's not enough to abstract away from it. We have to lean into it. We have to dig down deeper into it. We are not capable of running away from the desires and the warmth and the fears and the difficulties of the heart. In the territory of the heart and the territory of the midos, we have to dig down deeper and deeper and deeper in order to face them, in order to be mitmoded with them. In the realm of emotional vibrancy and viscerality, which affects us in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day lives, when we're engaged with other people, when we're no longer operating in the unicity of our mind, we're no longer operating in the cool, calm, and collected kind of space of safety where I determine the frequency because it's my own mind. In the place of the heart is open to other people. Gam ha'olam nasam belibam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has placed the world in our hearts, meaning to say the heart is the place that we encounter the world. We encounter the lev ha'olam, and we are one lev amongst all of the other levavos in the world, and there's period levavos and there's an embitterment when one heart encounters another heart and there's an imbalance. In that place of other people, in the world of other things, or the projection onto other people, or the experience of stimuli that are triggering certain responses internally that are removed from the ideality of thought, in that place, a person cannot live in the transcendent ideal. A person has to descend down into the imminent real. A person has to encounter experience as it faces them in that moment, today, right here, right now, not to run into a place of eternity of the mind, but rather to descend down into the present moment of this day. Now, it would seem that if we can make a choice, that would be ideal to live only in the mind, to live only in Chachma, to live only in the cool, calm, and collected nature of Atzilus and the Machshava and the clarification of thought that clears away all blockages, that gets rid of all of the traffic jams, and simply to live in that place of goodness and goodness and goodness and more goodness and good thoughts and more good thoughts. But the descent into the heart would seem to be a momentary descent. It would seem to be a failure. It would seem to be, okay, right now I find myself in the world of the shuk. I find myself in the difficult place where my heart feels like a stone, and I have to just be patient enough until I can get back up to the top where I can operate again in the cool, calm, and collected laboratory elements of my mind. But that's not what the Torah tells us, and that's not what our tzaddikim tell us, bichlal. And we know this already. It's not enough to be in chachma. Chachma needs to be drawn down into bina. The machshava has to be revealed within the heart, because ultimately it's in the heart, it's in this worldliness, it's in today itself, it's in the consciousness that the human being, which is a composite of a neshama in a guf, an or in a kli, as it experiences life today, from the moment that it wakes up in the morning, in the secret of chadashim lebakarim rabba amunasecha, when the soul returns itself with new intensity that has never been revealed before, because each day is a new reality, and from that point forward, through the day that is lived with all of the various cycles and life cycles and experiences, until the point that a person puts their head down on the pillow, that is the day, that is Hayom. And in that place, a person encounters the Lev. In that place, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal himself in accordance with the particular expression of this moment and my soul and my mind and my body in relationship to this moment and these stimuli right here, right now. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to only live in the ideal and the never-ending, unchanging nature of unity of the mind, so then we would not have to try and adapt ourselves to the shifting and the changing and the hyper specificity and particularity of each and every moment and the call of each and every moment. If Hashem wanted us to escape back up into infinitude and into Yichud Ilah, so then He would have only taught us about Yichud Ilah. The Tzaddikim would have only given us Yichud Ilah. The Balatani would have only given us Shara Yichud Ve'emunah to think about how everything is Osios, and He never would have given us the Tanya, which teaches us about the battle between the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Nefesh HaLukus. If Rabbi Nachman, the Tzaddik that was revealing the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's wisdom for our generation, if the goal was to only live in Einon Milvado, so then it wouldn't be about drawing every part of our personal experience and the manios of each and every day and the struggles of each and every day into spiritual consciousness. It would have been enough to remain in hisbodedus and cool, calm, and collected speculation of spiritual ideals and partsufim and configurations in the world of Atzilus. And what would I need to come upon the secret of hisbodedus for? Why would I need to encounter HaKadosh Baruch Hu in my own most solitude and to bring all of my stuff, all of today's stuff to Him for 1 hour a day to say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what hurt me today. This is what was joyous today. This is where I'm struggling today. This is what I'm grateful for today. This is where I found you today. This is where I didn't find you today. This is where I felt I did good enough today. This is where I want your help to do better and better and better, and to uncover the vicissitudes and the ever-changing potency of the genius of self and its nefesh Bahamis orientation. If that was secondary, then the tzaddikim would not have given us a roadmap as to how to cultivate spiritual connectivity there. We wouldn't have to come upon this nature of yichud tata or baruch shem kavod malchus olam va'ed or finding HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. It would have been enough to run into Atzilus. It would have been enough to live in the ideality. Elama. The Torah HaKadosha is the singular secret that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be found not only above, but it's specifically when above descends down below, because when it takes shape below, there's going to be an emphasis of the potency of the Torah that could not have been revealed up above. This is why the Malachim could not get the Torah. The Malachim don't live with a heart. The Malachim don't have a heart. The Malachim have a mind. They're sichli. It's a coding and a mission, and it knows how to accomplish its mission. The lave is the thing that could get knocked off its mission. The lave gets mibulbal. The lave can open itself up into circuitous pathways that lead up or lead down. It's a place of the twisted thinking that gets us stuck, and it's also the remarkable twisting of thought that gets us unstuck as well. In that place, the malachim have no capacity. That's born out of the kisei hakavod. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu was achuz on. Moshe Rabbeinu had to grab hold of the kisei hakavod, which is the shorish of bina, the heart of the individual. That's where the Torah is meant to be given. Gam ha'olam nasam belibam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us everything in our heart. And it's specifically down here in the day-to-day, the hour-to-hour, the minute-to-minute, the moment-to-moment processing and encounter with this worldliness and all of its various manifestations and all of its triggers and all of its awakenings and all of its impulses and all of its stimuli and all of the rapid shifting and changing. If this is the metzias of the Welt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has placed us in, then it's our job to uncover the secret point of the heart within all of it. That's going to be the avodah of the Torah of today. Hayom im bekolo tishma'u. We have to allow the lave to listen to the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem, how do I find you here today? How does the wisdom of the tzaddikim have an impact on the here and now so that I can actually engrave myself ever so deeply into the experience of this worldliness and not to, God forbid, run the risk of missing out? A person who wants to be a transcendentalist, a person who wants to live only in Yichud Ilah, misses out on experience. And no matter what thinking patterns and no matter what poetic descriptions of unity we can conceive of, in the end of the day, if they are not conveyed to the heart and they do not break through that mind-body barrier, then they are simply going to grow heavy in the mind, and the mind is going to be filled with fancy ideas, and the heart is going to be deprived of all of it. The heart is going to be starving, and it's going to try and find satisfaction in anything. It's a rachmanas that we feed our minds without allowing it to trickle down into our hearts. And the avodah of the Torah of Hayom, which is the secret of Vias HaMashiach, which is the secret of drawing the mind into the heart and being mamtik the heart itself and being mamtik the difficulties and the emotional hues and valences of those midos which are subject to shvira and the Zayin Malchei Edom that fall down and shatter into a million different pieces. And it's our job to refine them, to elevate them, to clarify them, to raise them up, return them back to their source, so that we can live with them properly. This is the avodah of the midos. This is the avodah of refining the self so that it can engage with today. engage with today? How do I extend today? How do I learn to face whatever it is that I'm facing today, whatever the circumstances of today are, with more bravery, with more confidence, with more yishuv hadas, with more emuna, with more simcha, with more bittul, with more of an awareness that even in my bina orientation, even in my burning heart, and the heart that is inflamed with love for all things, only singularly rooted in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but until it finds that light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's going to search for it everywhere. How do I draw that flame? How do I take that? And instead of feeling that my life down here in all of its various manifold expressions of intensity, the ups and the downs and the rights and the lefts and the wins and the losses of it, and the bifurcation of it all and the bipolarity of it all, how do I learn to face that, not with a sense of, okay, if I have to do this, I have to do this, but ideally, I wish I was living in the world of the unity of thought. Adarabba Ibcha Mistabra. How do we uncover the fact that the Iker is to be found in the heart itself, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be revealed down here in the heart, in the bina of the lave? What is the access point? How do we begin? Now, this is just going to be a general framing. But one of the things that we have to think about is the reason that we've neglected the lave so much, or the fact that the lave has been neglected and that the emotional valence of human experience has been neglected for the sake of the transcendental ideals of thinking and abstraction, is because we've never really been taught that we're Bali Bechira over the territory of the heart. We've never really been taught that we have volitional strength when it comes to our emotional valences, because we've become so accustomed to the habituated nature of emotional feeling, and we've become so weakened in the face of what moods actually feel like, that we've stopped even trying to raise our heads to face them. In the mind, okay, in the cool abstraction of thought, I can learn how to think differently. Because in that place, I am not at the hands of the furies of this worldly experience. I'm not stuck within that statement of Chazal, the most intense statement of Chazal of Olam kimin noheg, that the world operates the way it operates. That's not true in the realm of Machshava. In the realm of Machshava, I can clarify everything. So in that place, I can choose to learn to think differently. I can choose to uncover the negative patterns of thought and reorient myself into patterns of thinking in a different way. But in the lave, because the way that emotional valences are felt and in their viscerality, they feel like they're physiological to the degree that they are beyond our capacity to choose whether we would like to feel them or respond to them, or not feel them and not respond to them, we've stopped trying. The heart moves so quickly, Bina, and the fire of emotional response and the vicissitudes and the changes of each and every moment happen so rapidly that in the face of it, the self can only surrender and say, okay, I have no control over here. I might as well just claim that it's a mutva. I might as well just claim that it's a habit and it's habituated and I don't have bechira over it, and therefore it rests underneath my capacity of free choice, and I'll let things be what they are. And because we've assumed that our habituated emotional valences and the moods of ourselves and the temperaments that we carry with ourselves are written in stone to the degree that they're choik nasan v'lo ya'avor, so we've come to accept them, and we've become slaves to our own hearts. We've become slaves to the moods that reign supreme over our lives. And at the slightest trigger, we fall prey to those moods that can cover us in however long they last, whether it's a good mood or a bad mood. And so instead of fighting them, and instead of feeling that we have any bechira in the territory of the heart, we've given up the territory of the heart, and we've said, let me at least live in the calmness of the machshava. But the secret of Panimiyas Torah and the secret of Hasidus, and ultimately what was reawoken through the attempt of the Musar movement, and what is happening now and now more and more in our awareness of the Torah of today, and Hayom and Bekolo Tishma'u, and the necessity of the Torah of today, is that we are reclaiming the territory of the Bechiras Halev. And in truth, we're coming to understand that the clearest place in which we can uncover Bechira is going to be in the heart itself. That even though the things that we feel like they've been felt for so long that there's no way to feel differently, and that because the way that I respond to the way that I feel and the way that I respond to certain triggers in my life are the ways that I've always responded to those triggers in my life, and I haven't changed them and I won't be able to change them. I can change my cognitive distortions, but to change my habituated reactions, it's nearly impossible. We've grown accustomed and we've become avadim. And now we're uncovering the secret of the bechiras halev, of choosing with our hearts, of encountering the true place of bechira, which is not how I think about the situation in terms of a grandiose perspective of abstraction, but rather, how do I face this moment? How do I actually live in this moment? How do I draw down that inner wisdom of the mind and allow it to cross that very fine barrier of das and enter into the wavelength of human response time in this world so that I can actually live better, so that I can be calmer, so that I can be kinder, so that I can be more patient, and so that I can actually bring out the illumination of the mind down into the territory of the self, down into the body. How do I draw down all of the wisdom and allow it to inform my decision making? How do I draw it down so that it can inform the ways in which I'm going to face the other in my life, the child, the spouse, the parent, the sibling, the coworker, the boss, the friend? All of these are worlds upon worlds upon worlds, and there's so much potency, there's so much infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that rests within our heart, but because we've become so accustomed to the closeness of the heart and we feel that it's a leiv ha'even and that there's nothing that can be done there, so we relinquish our control and we say the heart keeps score, the heart runs the show, and the only place that I can work is in machshava. It's a cheap abstraction trick that allows me to rest calmly within the ideals of Olam Ha'atzilus, but it frees me from living within the reality of Olamus of Pirud. The Torah of the heart, the Torah of today, the Torah of Mashiach, the Torah of irrigating waters of the mind down into the body is not foregoing the nature of the mind. Adrabah, we're going to see that the mind is the ikr. It's the moyach hashalit al halev. The mind has to have a power to impose its limits upon the heart, but the goal is to draw it down into the heart. If it was just the moach, then there would have been no need to have the moach shalit on the lev. There would be no need to go through all of the battles to try and ensure that we know how to inform the wisdom of the mind upon the feelings and the furies of the heart. Adrabah, ipcha mastaber, the heart is the main place. The lev is the ikr. Dabru al lev Yerushalayim. We have to uncover the leiv ha'evan. We have to find that leiv basar within it. That's the place that Mashiach Tzidkenu wants to be revealed. He stands in the krach gadol sheberomi right now. Mashiach Tzidkenu stands in that place of concealment in the Malchei Edom, where it feels that there's a demima, there's a silence in the territory of the emotions, and the only thing that the emotions can do is reign supreme and reign with fury, like Esav Harasha and Al Charbechetichya and Isha Sadeh. But Yaakov Avinu stealing the territory of the leiv from Esav Harasha is the secret of Mashiach Tzidkenu in the gates of Rome, where we're uncovering the secret potency of the Malchei Edom, which are the midos themselves, and we're uncovering the secret of tikkun within the midos, rectification of the self in its encounter with this worldliness itself, not necessarily a Torah in the books, which is the world of Atzilus, but a Torah in the Shuk, which is the worlds of Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, the Torah of Shorsha Naga Chesapar, not in the Gemara necessarily, but in the actual encounter with it, in those lived experiences. And what we're going to see Be'ezras Hashem in the next year is that the first starting point that we need to begin to utilize in order to access this Torah of Hayom is the realization that we do have Bechira over the heart, and that what we need to do is first and foremost slow down. Part of the reason that the heart feels so congealed and it feels so much like a stone is because the rapid speed in which it repeats itself over and over seems to cross over and cover up any free territory in which I can theoretically manage some positioning to make a free choice. If there's no place for me, there's no place for me to make a choice. If there's no empty space for me to express myself and my shlita over myself through the koach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then obviously I'm not going to feel that I'm in control. So the first thing that has to happen is there has to be a space that opens up within the heart that enables me to at least get a footing so that I can begin to look at the emotions and begin to communicate with them as a Baal Bechira. And so the first step is going to be being mitzamsem, a place within our heart. And again, this is what I meant to speak about today, but this is the introduction that we have to do. The pasuk that we're going to really be working with is the pasuk when Moshe Rabbeinu desires to see everything. Moshe Rabbeinu wants to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu wants to see the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He wants to see the tefillin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He wants to see the wisdom. He wants to see the chachma of it all. He wants to see the illumination and the light and the cool, calm, and collected abstraction of the mind. But he was afraid of the heart. Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of the snake of the heart. He was afraid of the Lev Ha'evan of Paro. He was afraid of the Kaved Lev Paro. Because when Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Jewish people were dealing with their midos in Mitzrayim, it still seemed that no, if it's the heart, it's the Kaved, the liver, those embodied, habituated traits, they reign supreme over the heart. And we see that over and over with Paro. But the secret of Moshe Rabbeinu is uncovering the wisdom of the heart, of uncovering the ability to speak to the heart, to speak calmly to the heart. And when Moshe Rabbeinu wants to uncover the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol, to live in that transcendental ideal, because he was afraid of that emotional space of the Tzur Levavi, of that stone of the heart. So he says, I want to see everything. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, go into the Nikras Hatzur. Go into the Nikras Hatzur, go into the cleft in the rock. What's the cleft in the rock? The Meforshim point out it's the Ma'aras Halev, it's the cave of the heart, that we have to engrave an engraving. We have to be tsar, tsura within the heart. We have to make space, first and foremost, within the territory where it feels that it's so saturated that there is no space for me to make a choice, and we have to reveal the space there. We have to engrave an engraving, a cave within the heart. And this, there's so much to say, Be'ezras Hashem, but within that engraving, in that cave within the heart, when we can move inwards, when we can develop a halal in the lave, a vacant space, libi halal bakirbi, the beginning is making a halal in the heart. The halal is the beginning of existence. It's where I can take shape, where something separate than the infinite thing can take shape. Before the creation of the world, Hashem's light was infinite, and he had to be mitzamsem himself, so to speak, to create a makom for the world, so that something other than godliness could be expressed. So too in our hearts, when our hearts feel so saturated with emotional impulse that it's impossible for us to make a choice, and it feels like kaved leiv paro, that the heart has become habituated, and therefore we ignore it, and we run only to the protection and the calmness of the moach. It's specifically here that we have to make it simsim in the heart, libi chalal bakirbi, to engrave an engraving, and nikras hatz in the Tzur Levavi, to engrave a cleft within the rock, a cave where I can be patient enough to realize that, wait a second, I can respond to my emotional balances. And in the time of Svira, in the time of rectifying the midos, of each and every day being a world unto itself, and each and every day and each and every moment containing all of the moments and all of the midos, the job is to rectify the chait of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. Kavod comes about when I can make space for another person, when I can make space for myself. If there's no kavod of the self and there's no kavod of another person, it means that I don't even make space to reflect upon myself, because every yid has the ability to find the Nakuda Tova within themselves. But if I don't feel that I have a position to be on the lookout for Nakuda Tova, then it's going to feel like it's an impossibility. So the first thing is making a space from which I can develop a vantage point to see a Nakuda Tova. Prior to that space making and that creation of a tzimtzum, there's no possibility for me to look out. There has to be a point of lookout for me to be able to look out and find the Nakuda Tova. So the first thing is to be mitzamsem the heart, to create a Nikras Hatzur. Rabbi Akiva and his Talmidim, they were not Rabbi Akiva, but his Talmidim were responding to the immediacy of their feelings. That there was the immediacy. Shalom Nahgu Kavod Zalazeh. It was Olam Kiminhago Nahig. There were Hanhagos. This was habituated experience. There was no changing of those midos. This time was spent in the Moach, but the midos, those are unchanging until the tikkun of it is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And what's the tikkun? Entering into the cave. To enter into the cave, Libi Chalal Bakirbi, to engrave engravings within the heart. And Amir Hashem, to engrave an engraving benikras hatzur in the tzur levavi, to make space, to uncover the potency of the artistic capacity of the mind to shape the emotional response of a tzartzura begotzura, to create a shape within the heart itself. And the secret of the first instantiation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation of the world was galif gilufe. He made an engraving, he made space. And these are all things we're going to discuss on practical levels of each and every emotional balance, of how to move forward with a wisdom that illuminates the heart, so that we can find HaKadosh Baruch Hu more and more today. Because when we can find HaKadosh Baruch Hu today, instead of then or afterwards or before or after in the abstraction of the mind, but we can find him right here, right now, in the chaos of the heart, in the intensity of the heart, in the overwhelmingness of the heart, in the bilbul of the heart, and to create a space of Yishav Hadas, of Menuchas HaNefesh, to uncover that innermost point of the Beis and that Aleph of Anoichi. That's the secret of redemption in the here and now. That's the secret of Olamecha Ter B'Chayecha. Be'ezras Hashem, we should move forward, Mechayel El Chayel, to awaken the strength within the heart, to be able to tolerate and to deal with the vicissitudes of what it means to be human, and to uncover the Torah of today, Be'ezras Hashem.